Sage Wanderer here, and welcome to Coffee Talk! Today we're going to talk about time travel and the possibility that there are time travelers operating today in our world and affecting our situation and our reality. If y'all have missed me, I am back from the dead. I had 10 or 11 days of COVID, and this morning I woke up feeling mostly better. It went away as quickly as it came on. So thanks to all of you who prayed for me. It was a real struggle, and I've come out the other side. So it's nice to be back at work. I missed almost 2 full weeks. So today we're going to talk about time travel. Now, a lot of this is based on the stories of Andrew Basiago, a person who claims to have been a child time traveler. We're going to also talk about The Simpsons. We're going to talk about the concept of Trump being a time traveler. We're going to talk about the Vatican's involvement in all of this. And the basic premise is, what if there are time travelers operating today and they are affecting our reality? So let's look at the basic ideas of time travel. And we'll start with Back to the Future. In Back to the Future 2, we see that Biff went back in time in the time machine. He got the Sportsman's Almanac and had in his possession the ability to predict all sporting events. And he went back in time and gave it to his young self. And in doing so, he changed the future negatively, excuse me. And we see some reference already way before Trump would ever run for president. We see them kind of aligning this with Trump. We see Biff becoming a cartoon character version of Donald Trump. And in that, he becomes president. So one could argue through this Biff character, we have the deep state powers that be, the Hollywood machine, through fiction, telling us that Trump is a time traveler and that he would become president and be very corrupt and would cause our world to go down the drain. And that in and of itself makes me wonder if they knew something already. But in that storyline, when Doc and Marty are having their discussion, when they figured out what's happened, this is when they return back to their future, and their future is a mess because of what happened with Biff getting his hands on the time machine. And Doc says that it created a new timeline, right? That there's the original timeline. Biff goes back. He alters the timeline, and they're in this new timeline, and they traveled from their timeline back in time, and when they came back, they were on the new timeline. And here's the problem with that. And this comes from John Titor. John Titor basically said that he wasn't really afraid of altering the past, because when you travel back in time and alter the past, it doesn't affect your timeline. See, traveling backwards in time is futile, because all you do is create a new timeline. And then when you return to your timeline, nothing has changed. According to Basiago, they learned this through their experiments. Now, who is Basiago? Basiago is a man who claims that his father was a scientist involved in a DARPA deep state time travel experiment based on Tesla's lost technology, and that he was a time traveling child. The reason that they used children for time travel in the beginning was because they used electromagnetic fields to open up a portal in time, but they couldn't send larger people through at first. So they sent children through, smaller people, and because of an issue with having enough energy to open up a portal big enough to send a full-grown adult through. And he claims that Barack Obama and Elon Musk were both time-traveling children, that it was part of the program as well. And so Basiago claims that they went back several times and tried to prevent the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. And in every instance, Abraham Lincoln was still killed. They couldn't prevent it. And anything they did to try to prevent it did not change their timeline. So that's kind of proof of what Tidor said, is that if you go back in time and change something, all you're doing is creating a new universe in the multi-universe with an altered timeline that doesn't affect your timeline. So the Back to the Future premise is wrong. You can't go back and erase yourself from the present. Remember Marty would phase out because he affected the union between his mother and father, preventing him from ever being born. But that would prevent him from ever being born in the new timeline. It wouldn't prevent him from being born in the original timeline, because you cannot alter your original timeline, because any alteration just creates a new universe. Now, we can look forward in the future, change things now, and then look again and see the future being changed. So that's no different than normal human existence. You can change your future. We have free will. You can change your future. You can stop smoking and prevent your own death. You can change your lifestyle and become healthier. You can make investments now that will benefit you in the future, but you can't go back in time to your old version of you and change anything, because it just creates a new timeline. And you can't travel forward in time to the new timeline. When you go back in time, you go back to your original timeline and original source where you left to the past. But you can look into the future. Now, Basiago claims that the first devices that they had, and a device that Tesla himself possessed, was a viewer. You could go back in time and look at past events before they could open the portal big enough to send anyone or anything through. And this ties into a story of a whistleblower priest who claimed that the Vatican had a viewer, and that he was able to use this viewer to go back and view the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus Christ, and actually sit through his Sermon on the Mount. And by looking through this viewer. Now, I don't know whether I believe all of that, but this is coffee talk, right? But Basiago claims the Pegasus project was able to first create a viewer, then they were able to use the technology to transport in space. So you could use it as a transporter and go from one place to the other. But time travel took more energy, and this is why they sent children. Basiago's only form of tangible proof is he produced a photograph that was taken at the Gettysburg Address. In the photograph is a very unusual looking child present at the right before the speech is made. And this photograph is taken of this child wearing ridiculously oversized clothes. He has a 70s style haircut, and his shoes look at least 5 sizes too big. And Basiago claims that this is himself, that he traveled back in time. The reason the clothes don't fit is he stole them off of a clothesline so that he would fit in, and they were not children's clothes but adult clothes. And he found these clothes and shoes that were way too big. And they capture a picture of him at the Gettysburg Address. And I do find that photo to be very interesting, because I know a thing or two about the Gettysburg Address. First of all, that was an address at the Battle of Gettysburg, and it was a very solemn event. There were thousands of dead soldiers from that. It was seen as one of the biggest tragedies in the Civil War. The Gettysburg Address was solemn. And it rained the entire day. It was a rainy, muddy mess. And it was not someplace children would be present. So finding this photo of a child dressed in these oversized clothes in this, in this environment, in this time and place, is peculiar. So the photo alone is very peculiar, and I'd love to know the story behind it, whether it's a time traveler story or not. So Basiago claims that Barack Obama and Elon Musk are both time travelers, and that they were part of this Pegasus project, and that the technology that Elon Musk used to create the Tesla car was because he was able to look into the future and see the advancements of technology and bring them early. Remember, you can go into the future, get information, and change our timeline and alter it. And then if you go and look in the future again, you'll see a different future. And so it appears that Elon Musk went forward in time, or used the viewer to look forward in time, or was sent forward in time and gleaned enough information to give him a head start on the electric car business. Now, this also goes back to the conspiracy theory that Trump is a time traveler. So we get this mainly from one piece of information. When Tesla died in a New York hotel room alone, surrounded by his life's work stacked in trunks, that the military industrial complex seized his property. And there were 60, I believe, I could be wrong on the numbers here, I'm going from memory, but I believe there were 60 trunks from Tesla that contained his research, and but that were logged in, but really there were 80. That there were 80 trunks, and only 60 of them actually made it into the archives. So 20 missing Tesla trunks full of his research. What do we know about Nikola Tesla and his interaction with the government? We do know that he was involved loosely with the Philadelphia experiment, which was teletransportation and potentially time travel experiment. We know that he was involved in the development of the nuclear bomb. And we know that he had a death ray that he was trying to market to the Defense Department during World War II. And instead of going with the Tesla death ray and putting all their efforts into developing that super weapon, they went with Oppenheimer and his atomic bomb. And ever since then, we went double down on atomic bombs. And some claim that the Tesla death ray was never developed. Others claim that it was developed, and this is what we have now: particle beam weapons that some claim are used to set fires and destroy buildings around the globe. Hawaii, California wildfires. But others claim that he also had finished research on free energy, which has been suppressed, and finished research on time travel. And this is Basiago's claim, is that Project Pegasus was the result of a hyper super secret government project on time control and teletransportation that allowed them to actually have a working time machine by the late 1960s and early 1970s. And another conspiracy theory is that Matt Groening, the developer of The Simpsons, was also one of these time traveling children, and that this is why The Simpsons tend to predict the future. In fact, one of the recent videos is a Simpsons episode where a ship takes out a bridge, just like what happened in Baltimore. A container ship takes out a bridge abutment and takes down a bridge. So it seems that the Simpsons writers either have some inside information or they are great at guessing the future. And some argue that he is one of these time travelers. So I'm going to weave all of this together with our headlines and recent history to show you how we might be experiencing time travelers' wars for the future of humanity. Now remember, they can't change the past. All they do is create a new timeline that we can't access. So you can go to the past and learn the truth about things, and you can go to the future and see where we're headed. So in that way, time travel is somewhat useless except to gather information from the past and information from the future. If you go to the future and change things, you're just changing the future on that timeline. It doesn't mean that when we get there, anything will change. You can't prevent a future nuclear war in the future. You can't go back in the past and prevent some incident from the past. You're just creating new universes, new multiverses, new timelines. But what you can do is gain information from the past and future and use it in this timeline to change things, just like any other endeavor. Like if you were to quit smoking, it might change your future. If you were to make investments, if you were to quit a job and get a different one, you can change your future. That's the basis of free will. We can do that without the benefit of time travel. However, if you have the ability to look ahead in time and see a catastrophe, you can head that catastrophe off by creating or changing this timeline and preventing that future timeline from ever existing. Don't. So, according to Basiago, we've got, and other sources, we've got the Trump family being in control of at least a viewer, if not an actual time travel device. Now, the missing trunks. We talked about Tesla's missing information. You know, where did it go? Well, we do know this, that once all of the material was seized from the Tesla hotel room, it was sent to a leading scientist and government employee, a man named John Trump. This is Donald Trump's uncle. And that Donald Trump's uncle took some of these trunks, and the rest went to the government, but some of them stayed in his possession. And that he used the information he found to create at least a viewer of the future. That John Trump and Donald Trump and his family, the Trump family, looked into the future using this viewer technology and saw our nation in the future falling into totalitarianism. Essentially, the swamp, the deep state, gets so powerful that it erodes all of our rights, and America as we know it ceases to exist and is replaced with a totalitarian, nearly communist, fascist regime that enslaves the United States and leads to the eventual total downfall of the United States. And upon viewing this, they decided that this was not a future they wanted to happen, that they wanted to do something to prevent this future event, and that they used some of the information they gleaned to make Donald Trump a multi-billionaire, and had plans for him from his early youth to be the president of the United States, that they wanted to insert his presidential candidacy in the timeline that they viewed at a particular moment of critical mass moment, where that was the turning point. If Hillary Clinton had become president, that would have led us down the pathway towards totalitarianism. And by Donald Trump getting the presidency, they hoped they could head it off at the pass. Now, one thing about utilizing a time viewer or a time traveling device to decipher the future is that every time you make a change in this timeline, you create a new timeline. And you have to use the machine to see how your change affected the future. So Donald Trump was in the catbird seat coming into the election. He had all the information he needed to basically engineer a real come from behind victory that surprised the world in 2016 and become president of the United States. The only problem is that created a new timeline. The minute he announced that he was becoming a candidate, it changed the future. And so therefore everything became suddenly unpredictable. So it was nearly impossible for him to predict what the deep state would do in regard to his presidency. This is why he looks like a guy who knows the future right up until the point where he wins, and then he doesn't know what's going to happen next. I believe that the was a direct result of him becoming president, the attempt of the deep state to expedite their slow downfall and destruction of the United States by introducing that thing that I just got over. And that was something that Donald Trump, even with a time machine, couldn't see into the future and predict. Because remember, every time you change something, it creates a new timeline. And then you have to use your viewer again to see what happens next. And the next time you change something, it changes again. And so this kind of creates, time travel, whether it's a viewer or a time traveling device, is really not that big of a game changer because of the things I'm talking about. Because every time you make a change, it changes the future. When you go back in time and try to change something from the past, you can't really. All you do is create a new timeline. And when you return to your time, nothing has changed. This is what Basiago found out in trying to alter the past at the assassination of President Lincoln. That there was nothing they could do to change that fate, and if they did change things, nothing changed in their timeline. So backwards time travel is essentially useless except to prove things about your timeline that you already know. If you go back, or to prove things that you believe happened, um, but you can't go back and change anything, and so it makes it more or less useless. A future time machine, looking into the future time travel, is much more useful. So back to our time traveler wars. So you've got Elon Musk, who's part of this Project Pegasus, who's a child time traveler who gleans enough information to make himself a billionaire, creating a new timeline, right? And it seems like he used the information to benefit himself. The Trump family used the information that they gleaned from the future to head off at the pass the downfall of America, or they are attempting to do this, and that uh, Obama used the information that he had to ensure that the takedown of America would happen. That he fell into the camp of the people who were engineering the fall of America and the rise of totalitarianism and the end of freedom, and that he was one of their main tools that they used to bring about this sudden change in our country and move us one step closer to their hopes of putting Hillary Clinton in as president, who would usher in the totalitarian age. And Trump was the fly in the ointment. And this is the main reason they've been so desperately trying to destroy Donald Trump and his whole family, because they understand that they have this technology and they're using it to affect our future and to prevent the totalitarian takeover of the United States. And so you have these incidences where you use the time machine to look into the near future, you head off your enemies at the past, creating a new future, and then you have to look again into the new universe you've created to see what's happening next. And it's causing chaos. As much as you think it would cause it to be predictable, it's causing it to be completely unpredictable, because every change creates a new timeline, and then you have to use your machine to go forward and look at the new timeline, and then you make another change, right? But then you've also got people on the other side of the spectrum who possess the same technology, and they're making changes which is affecting your timeline, you're making changes which is affecting their timeline, and the result is chaos. Ultimately, there's no way to rig the system of free will. Whether you travel back in time to try and change something, it's an act of futility. You can't change your timeline, you just create a new one. If you go forward in time and gather information and make changes, you can change that timeline. But if somebody else has the same technology, they're making changes which change your timeline and theirs. You see where I'm going? And so they're constantly making changes, constantly looking forward in time to see the result of their changes. And the result is this chaotic time that we live in, where we get new surprises and new global events, and they're all being engineered, they're all being tweaked, they're all being tampered with by multiple individuals who possess the ability to at least look forward in time, if not travel forward in time, and actually gather information or technology and bring it back to their present. But when you make a change in your present, you're just altering your timeline, and the other timeline that you visited is now either gone or beyond your reach. Any future that you go to will not be that timeline, not the original timeline, but the new timeline you created with your changes. So this is just a conspiracy theory, a what if. What if we had one or more groups in control of time travel technology that was discovered by Tesla? Of course, I also have a theory that Tesla didn't discover anything, but was getting downloads from the fallen angels, the ones who have been tampering with our society since the beginning of time and are really back in a major way in our current world. And so they gave him this technology through downloads, through mental downloads. And Tesla himself would say that these things just came out of the clear blue sky, that he would basically sit for long hours and think, And these ideas and technologies and discoveries of free energy, teleportation, particle beam technology, and time travel would all just pop into his head. And so, once again, I think the technology is not a gift from God, but a stumbling block by the enemy. That if we wanted to live according to God's plan, we would all be farmers and country folk who live close to the land, not jet flying, time traveling, internet exploring, uh, people. I think that's more a product of demonic influence. So I don't know that Tesla got his information from a holy source, right? But he did get it from some kind of extraterrestrial, interdimensional beings who gifted him with this technology. And upon his death, the time travel technology in particular fell into the hands of very intelligent people like John Trump and the Trump family. It fell into the hands of the deep state through Obama, and Elon Musk, who was part of it as a child, according to Basiago, also utilized that to make himself rich and famous. So do they still possess these time machines? Are they going on old information? Or is there an active time war happening between different various factions who have control of this technology? Tell me what you think in the time travel section. I'm sorry, I'm still getting over you know the thing that shall remain unnamed. Hey, just because I use that word, if you look up here at the top of my channel, I promise you there'll be a thing from YouTube that says, for more information on OvidK, click here, and they'll tell you all of the government propaganda around this illness. It's a crazy world we live in, but tell me what you think in the comments section. Send me an email if you want to have a longer discussion. And don't forget to support this channel. As you can see, I'm in my office chair because my recliner over there died. The metal frame broke because I'm a big man, and I got to come up with the money for a new one. So anybody who wants to kick in for a new throne for the Coffee Talk King, please find the links in the description. And we'll see you the next time on Coffee Talk.